Since the Six-Day War, Israel has strictly kept what is known as the status quo over the Mount Temple. Muslims freely pray at the AlAqsa Mosque. Jews pray at the Western Wall. Jews can visit the Temple Mount as tourists anytime. Based on halachic ruling, Jews are not allowed to visit the site, let alone to pray there. So to speak about the topic today, we have with us Major General Reserve Eitan Dangot. He was the coordinator of the Israeli government activities in the territories, military secretary to 3 ministers of defense, and chief of the Home Front Command. He will be speaking for about 20 minutes, and afterwards, we will take questions from you. Please use the chat feature on your screen and be sure. Major General Reserve Eitan Dangot, please.
Thank you, Eytan. Good evening from Jaffa. I'm doing the short briefing from Jaffa. And I would like in the coming minutes to make a short overview and a real-time assessment concerning the situation of Jerusalem, what we are assess and what we are estimate for even the coming hours, and even give you some points for the coming future days if it goes in the same day as it is now. The main thing, I will start from the end. It looks like the march with the flags to the Kotel HaMaaravi, to the square of the Kotel, is going on without a major violence or events that till now can break and can change the situation that we are observed from the morning. It looks like till now, in the last hours, we face a lot of threats that are coming from Hamas, especially, also assisted by Jihad Islamic and other kind of radical movement, that till now, they are staying on the level of threats and trying to create any kind of escalation and incitement. What we are looking now for the fact towards the end of this kind of going towards the Kotel from Nablus Day, it means that the crossing in the East Jerusalem is the most sensitive area while you have the point meeting between Jews and Arabs in the east of Jerusalem. And when I'm telling about it, from the both groups, there are youth or those who are coming especially to create any kind of violence or escalation that till now are controlled, I can say very well, by the police. Now go from the beginning. We are today are going to end a very sensitive time that has been started from the murders before the Ramadan that was started by the Bedouin in the south, encouraging by the ideologic of the Daesh, ISIS, and later on jumped towards the time of the Ramadan while we identify murderers by Israeli Arabs, radicals, and by Palestinians from the West Bank. It created this kind of event and climb up to such kind of violence, murderers that cause people life in Israel, as you are quietly aware. And as more as we climb up towards the end weeks of the Ramadan, the time was very tense. After passing the end of the Ramadan and coming to the Eid al-Fitr, we enter to the second shift that is going to be ended this night by the march of the Day of Jerusalem that everybody of us are happy to celebrate and mention as the capital of Israel. So it looks that it's almost 2 months that Israel were very under a big threat on one end from this kind of terror, and on the other end, the security forces in Israel that were divided between the Israel Defense Forces in the West Bank and on the fence, and the Israeli police inside the Israeli territory, western to the Green Line, and the east of Jerusalem, and the umbrella of the Interior Security Service are working very hard. The fighters, men and women, the commanders are really under weeks of being 7 days a day, 24 hours per day, all over the country or area, trying to, on one end, to prevent any kind of murdering from this terror event, on the other end, trying to identify more and more potential terrorists in their area, which planned or were inside by the other side. I would like from this part to move to say who is the other side, and in a short briefing, what is the part especially of Hamas. We will start from the bottom up. We are on the first shift of the Ramadan. It's basically, from my experience, and we know it, the sensitive situation is climbing up because of the religious situation when you are coming towards the prayer in the Temple Mountain, etc. It's much more easy to create kind of escalation, due incitement, and using the religious issue as the weak part of Arabs or Palestinian. And I say because we have to be very serious towards the part of the radical Israeli Arabs that from the last years we identify as a partners or even leading situation in the Temple Mountain, which creating this kind of atmosphere. The second one is the Palestinians. The West Bank is under a bubbling period, which has been started on May 21, when Abu Mazen declared that he canceled the elections. And from that time, I can identify that the day after Abu Mazen has been started already, and I can identify in the field bubbling situation. But on the part of the terror, the leading part is coming towards Jenin area, while you cannot point of such organization like Hamas or Jihad Islamic or even Fatah that are creating or leading terror in a way of cabins on the, let's say, the way that we were used on the past. And we can identify a combination and a coordination of a block of integration, especially between Fatah, Tanzim, Fatah, AlAqsa, were in the past making a lot of troubles to Israel. The last years, they has become like a criminal groups, but they change very fast their way now and moving towards the terror, well armed with rifles and other kind of opportunities of killing, or with what we are telling about knife and the other types they are using. Secondly, the Jihad Islamic, we traditionally are very deep, let's say, in the north part of Jenin and the area around Jenin, are creating terror, and in the year of 2000 till 2006, a lot of bloodshed was bringing the Israeli Defense Forces till we succeed to break and to lower this kind of cabins. What happened in the last months that you see that they moved again, going as a criminal groups and moving by individual or a kind of combination between 2 to 3 people that are getting their orders from the atmosphere, from the social net. There is no commanding in the middle, and that comes the part of Hamas. Since 2021, Hamas has changed its strategy after the round with Israel in Gaza, while Israel attacked it very deeply. What happened there that Hamas is using strategic policy, which first of all are coming and saying to the Palestinian and the Arab, Israeli Arabs, and to even Arab people around Israel and the Muslim countries in the third circle, we are the goalkeeper of Jerusalem, of the Temple Mountain, and they are moving from one ear in a way of just using the incitement and directing people to make terror. On the other end, because of what happened in the last last activity in Gaza, operational activity in Gaza, the involvement of Egypt, they are understanding the meaning of loss of price for themselves of the infrastructure in Gaza, and they preparing themselves to the next operational activity with Israel at the timing it will be for them more comfortable or more strategic way to complete what they are doing now. I'm not believing that the economy situation in Gaza are forcing them to change. It has, let's say, an impact, but impact to serve their ideology of destroying an unrecognized Israel and waiting for the day it will suit to their plans. At that case, Hamas has become the defender of the Temple Mountain by using only some hundreds youth people of the east part of Jerusalem in the Temple Mountain. Some of them are Israeli Arabs, and at that case, Hamas almost all over the last year, especially in the last 2 months, emphasized the fact that they are going to continue in their defending Jerusalem. Few days ago, joined them also from time to time, the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, which on the Jerusalem day of the Iranian people, he mentioned and warned Israel concerning the factor that the radical wing and Hamas is in the front. Even Hamas is a Sunni organization, and you feel the united situation between them to defend Jerusalem. I think that the Israeli Defense Forces concerning the security Israeli government, from my experience, has created a right policy. First of all, closing the area of Jenin and making every night chirurgical arresting on operational activity. We does not have to make a big operational activities. It depends what are the results you expected. And in that field, we are touching, arresting, preventing from intelligence that are coming from Jenin and its area. Secondly, till now, of course, we close very rapidly with a lot of forces the fence between Israel and the West Bank in order to prevent. We failed 2 times already by entering, but you see a lower activity by terrorists who are coming inside Israel or attacking. Their problems are at their own, and we succeed to move the area of activity mostly to the zones of those terrorists that are staying and succeed to arrest or to kill some of them that didn't agree to be arrested. The third is this interior situation in Israel, which Israel, I think lately, has started to strengthen its leadership and its activity inside Israel, especially in area of Israeli Arabs, Bedouin, or others, while you feel that law and order has really decreased and come to a very unpleasant situation for regular Israeli civilian. Even today, there were some march in towns a year ago, like Lod, Ramle, and Akka, while we suffered from a lot of revenge activities by Israeli Arabs, where some march today, and they are presenting of security forces there as well. So while you are looking about this kind of activities, I think that Israel succeed in the last day to decrease the activities they are doing, not creating, let's say, fire or things that can immediately climb up to another kind of violence. And you know what is the problem in such a situation? The distance between tactic terror event to strategic dramatic development is almost nothing. The way it's happened, like now, while we are talking, it happened something, Hamas is just waiting for it, encouraging the people to go out and create terror activities in order to get any kind of reasons to create a fire or to strengthen their narrative of being the defender of the area. Israeli government concerning the Temple Mountain reduce the activities or the visiting during the Ramadan, but brought back again the status quo situation while Jews were allowed and are allowed now to visit under some restrictions the Temple Mountain area. Even today was the high number of people that were allowed, more than 2,500 as well. And it's a new afternoon again, in order to create the fact of one thing. The Israeli government decided a few days ago, and I support this decision, that no one will break our traditional of the route of this march, that from where it's going and where it's ended, and it will be under a big security forces from the Israeli police with the Israeli guarding border that are strengths that moved from the West Bank to Jerusalem. More than 3,000 people are there in order to let it go without the disruption. And even though we have dozens of events of violence, but I can call it in a low level, I can mention and say that the police are making, in my opinion, a fantastic job. From my experience as a commander, the heavy, let's say, weight on the shoulders of the soldiers or the policemen are such as they understand their job. They have to be patient, but they have very a way of going when they identify event in order to prevent it. They closed today one of the mosques in the Temple Mountain, and they are just on the way, in my opinion, of trying to close this kind of march if it be in about 1 hour, 1.5 hours. But still, it's not ended till it is ended. What do I mean? I mean that the threats besides local terror events are from launching, for example, rockets from Gaza by Hamas, in a low chance, in my opinion, or by Jihad Islamic. But I think that one of mistakes that has been done in the last weeks is under the fact that Hamas was identified as Hamas Gaza or Hamas in other places. We have to look at Hamas as one organization who make it strategic with a very high thinking, very deep thinking. They have time. They are using Lebanon Hamas, which are launching sometimes some of rockets under the umbrella of Hezbollah from the area of Tzor. They have commands in headquarters in Lebanon, in Turkey, and of course the official in Qatar. And in this part, Israel has to look at Hamas as one organization. The situation now that the Israeli Air Force is a very high alert. We can say that in this time, aircraft are moving above Gaza sky in order to say single messages that we are on a readiness to attack in any moment if something started. We have also RPVs in this area as well. And of course, towards the area of Lebanon, we used also some sensors as Egypt, as Jordan, trying to connect Jordan to the Temple Mountain to explain, even the chances are not out, and to reduce by such a thing the narrative, the status quo in the religious side in the Temple Mountain has no connection to the march. There is no connecting between what we are doing in the Day of Jerusalem towards respecting the freedom of religious of the Muslims in the Temple Mountain. So it will continue, in my opinion, till 1 day or 2 days more. I will not be surprised, even though I'll not give it a lot of chance, that there will be one mortar shell can be launched later or not be launched. But still, I think the process by the main decision of Israel to do what Israel should do in its capital, to decide what, how, and when to do it, is done by the government under the full activities of the security organization. I will stop in this part, Eitan, and if there are some questions, I will be glad to answer.
Thank you very much, General Dangot. Yes, we have a few questions. I'm going to read them to everybody. First question from Greg Mashberg. can you address the role of Jordan in inciting violence on Temple Mount in Jerusalem? Does that, just 1 second. Okay. Does not Israel have leverage over Jordan to change its destructive behavior? Can Israel push the United States to pressure Jordan to play a more constructive role?
I will say generally that, in my opinion, maybe Eitan, you can also add your view, but I think that Jordan has a lot of challenges in this time that we have to look on it. First of all, outside of Jordan. Jordan is the goalkeeper for Israel from the east direction. It means from the Shias wings that are coming from Tehran, Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut, and trying even to make entrance due Jordan under the fact that Jordan has half of its population are Palestinians and many refugees that entered, and some of them are Iranian. I think that first of all, we have to look at the challenges of the King of Jordan on one aspect, under the fact that he still signals the Jordan connecting and cannot move from the peace agreement with Israel, not even before, because it is something to security, because today Israel is one of the important direction that give Jordan the support of energy and gas, regular gas for its energy and electricity, and also for water. Under those, Jordan were low, I may say, in the last years, being as a partnership towards the Waqf in the Temple Mountain, and also under the policy of the former government, that you see that Jordan lost its main of the weight and was a tense between Israel and Jordan. The real task of Jordan that can be used by Israel as a law of meaning. And that brings me to the point, what Israel should do if the end of this event is ending without any kind of strong escalation. Israel should not wait to the next Ramadan or to the next event that connecting again the religious point, and should sit secretly under the radar with Jordan and creating understanding concerning what will be in the Temple Mountain, even without agree or with agree, but should discuss it more on these channels. On the other end, I identify as regular Israeli that the statements that are coming from Jordan towards Israel are more and more coming to the level of extremists and trying to signal their things to their imperial population. But on my knowledge, and if you analyze the situation in the area, I think that Jordan is still and has to be the main partner of giving them the aspect of the Muslims as observation, the Muslim part in the Temple Mountain, but of course under the full Israeli authorities around all over Jerusalem, etc., and find the mechanism in order, because I think it's under also Jordan goal to reduce this kind of incitement concerning the Temple Mountain. Jordan does not need it. Jordan making their statement concerning the atmosphere in their streets today.
Okay, thank you. Next question is this. Abbas is in the 16th year of his 4-year term. He hasn't scheduled elections because if they were in the West Bank today, Hamas would win. From Israel's perspective, does it make any practical difference whether Hamas or the Palestinian Authority were to win elections in the territories?
I think the elections, if it has been taken, would be, let's say, a thing that we are not want to share on to pass. It was clear to me that the statement of Abu Mazen or Abbas that time was like a step towards the United States. Why? He tried to use the entrance again of the democratic presidential structure in order to return to what was done in the years before. And that was his statement in order to return back to fulfill a very important task in the area concerning the Palestinians. He just was looking for a reason to cancel it under what he did at the beginning. And I think he regretted of his step, because you see how many groups, direction inside of the Fatah went out of their boxes and their doors. And even for us, it was a promo to look on the day after Abbas. Hamas has a very clear strategy. Hamas prefer silence in Gaza and fire in the West Bank in order to weakness the Palestinian authorities, in order to strengthen its force in the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is suffering today for a very low support, not because even the situation, let's say with Israel, especially because of the situation, a lot of aids coming from the population towards the leadership of the Fatah. The Fatah lost its contact with the field. They are not touching the people. They are blaming by the most of the population on criminal events of taking money, to their families, and not creating any kind of success of the economical life for their people. So Hamas has a time as such a movement of that are using its ideology and not recognize Israel, not recognize the agreement, and they are even coming to a thinking they can use the Israeli Arabs because the situation entirely in Israel, and are giving the, let's say, the impression, some of it, in my opinion, has insurance, that because of the weakness of the Israeli authorities in this area, this is the time that the Israeli Arab can join to such a step in order to create not a revolution, but a change in our area. So, in my opinion, Israel has to make now, the day after, a very clear decision concerning the policy with the Palestinian authorities towards Abbas, especially towards the day after Abbas. We don't have what to lose. We have just what to win. It means if there will be such of a crash there and we will have to interfere, okay, we are ready and we are there, but we don't want it. We even will take a risk of sometimes some areas that will be a bubbling area, but to continue the Palestinian authorities, the way of their entity instead of Hamas, and we have for it to make a change in our policy. I support, when I was in duty as coordinator of the government activity, on this very simple sentence: economy is security and security is economy. It's not clear what will be Israeli policy towards two-state solution or one-state solution, or in the middle to create such kind of mechanism for autonomy for economy. I believe we have to release, and on the other hand to hold, and to block any opportunity to Hamas to strengthen, and we have to do it to strengthen our control, law and order inside Israel. This is our main fault for what happened a year ago.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Yaniv Salama. What is your assessment regarding the activity of Turkish NGOs and charities operating in Jerusalem? Would it not be beneficial for Israel during this moment of rapprochement to close them up and deport their activists? With the Turkish energy minister accompanying the Turkish foreign minister on his recent trip, it would seem that a gas deal would be important enough to Turkey during their financial crisis to not make a lot of noise of Israel in their activity in Jerusalem. Finally, would it even benefit Israel to make an energy deal with Turkey at the expense of Egypt, Cyprus, and Greece?
I will divide my answer to two subjects, and I will start with the end. In my last of my jobs, I was the president of the gas companies in Israel, and I always point on Turkey as a partner who is waiting to a chance to join to this kind of Middle East group. This is a changer, a game changer in the Middle East, and I know it can make a balance towards Turkish policy, towards Israel and their involvement in terror. What does it mean? With Turkey, we have to be on one end to try to open the door. On the other end, we have to be very careful concerning the past. On issue of energy, I think we have to work and to try to develop it. It will help all the region to stabilize, and energy, especially after middle the war between Russia and Ukraine, and the energy problem that we are faced in Europe, in other parts of North Africa. I think this is something that Israel got from God even, to use the Mediterranean area to find more of it, the potential of gas, and to make it, develop it, and to exploit it all over in order to create a balance towards security issue. But for it, we have to demand. What we have to demand? We have to demand from Turkey to withdraw from its support to radical movements such as Hamas. Turkey is giving Hamas umbrella to the people that outside of Gaza, like Ismail Haniyeh, like Salah Hawouri, which in my opinion is the main target, that is, in my opinion, is a small Soleimani, which is trying to create a radical policy in our area, and he has on his end the blood of those people who were murdered in those terror events. So we have to demand from the Turkey, stop giving them opportunity to work from Turkey. Secondly, stop training those terrorism from Hamas, like in the sea activities, etc. The third issue is to give Turkey under such kind of condition, a part of involvement, but very limited inside Jerusalem. We don't need other partners in Jerusalem, besides the fact that we, of course, will control, will be the leadership, but with the like partners as Jordanian, or even a circle involvement outside the involvement of Egypt, but we don't have to give to Turkey any kind of entering, not especially in this period, to Jerusalem until they are showing and time will pass. We have to be much more patient, not to jump very rapidly with Turkey to the deep water.
Okay, thanks. The next question is by Larry Feingold. He's asking about the difference between the AlAqsa Mosque and the Temple Mount. This is a good question because many people are confused about these two names. Could you clarify?
Okay, first,
I will be very... It was my question. Also, I've been told that Al-Aqsa means the mosque, that it means the Temple Mount, that it means Jerusalem, or that it means all the land from the river to the sea. What do you think is the understanding and the propaganda?
I didn't hear you well. Can you repeat, Eitan?
No. The original question was broader. Does Al-Aqsa mean that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or the Temple Mount, or Jerusalem, or all of Israel?
Okay, I can say one thing from my experience. First of all, I'm not the expert concerning the Al-Aqsa area specifically, but I think that a regular Israeli that served 36 at the IDF, and from very young age, I identified the fact that we are here on a religious war. It means the time that those who are radical from the Muslims are identify weakness in our side and succeed to bring such incitement to their population, under the symbol of AlAqsa as one of the three holy places for the Muslims that the Jews has planned to enter to the mosque now, not all over the area, and to bring our, of course, holy place and to rebuild it again. And there are Jewish who are dreaming about it, of course. It gives and it helps them to bring people to make terrorism. And this is the only reason that in the last, I will say since 2007, 8, moved people to the streets. And it is done not by leading by Palestinians from the West Bank. As I said, it has been started by wings of radical Muslim wings inside Israel, like the Muslim Brothers in the Galil, in the north, or other kind of groups, or those who are living in East Jerusalem who get Israeli passport and they have the Israeli rights. The third group is, of course, the West Bank. And you know, I'm talking with Israeli Arabs or Israeli Palestinians, and I feel it. When we are coming to the religious, they believe to what they are listening 24 hours in the news, in the social net, in everywhere, about the plans of the Jewish to move them from the AlAqsa to other place. Besides it, it is used for national other aspects as the second place. If you are asking me if the issue of a Palestinian state will bring them to the street, my answer is no. Look what happened since the Arab Spring. What happened in the occasions while Israel had a lot of operational activities with Hamas. Most of the time we have local problems in the West Bank, but not as such as can be in other different scenarios. And even today, I think that this year, we are in this process because the Ramadan is ended. And those people who are using the AlAqsa mosque as the operator and the catalyst to create this kind of bloodshed in the area, lose one of the main tools they have in their hands. So the issue of Jerusalem is basically centralized in the mosque itself and in the status quo in it. I mean, around it, you have the area of the Jewish Temple Mountain, and where the Jewish are allowed, also for the freedom of religious, to make their tours there, to look. They are not allowed in, not to pray, not to make any kind of speeches there and pray. There are those who are against it, but this is the status quo. Now Israel has to work a lot in these coming months in order to convince and to share with especially Arab countries the mechanism of the resituation in AlAqsa or the Temple Mountain. I would like to remind everybody of us that before the first murder of the Bedouin in Beersheba, we were all celebrating here first meeting with Arab countries in the Negev, like a peace congress. And look, who is remember it today after what happened from the Ramadan and today about the Jerusalem march.
Okay, well, we are moving to Iran. This is the last question. What happens when Iran sets off a nuclear weapons test in their territory? This is a question by Milton Zagama.
You know, it's a very good question that I myself would like to ask it President Biden or other kind of countries in Europe. But I think that if I may go to the real situation of Iran, simply because of the time, I apologize, I would say like this. Iran is very close to reach the amount of nuclear material that is needed to produce the first bomb. It's clear to everybody, we cannot stop it. Secondly, the process of producing the bombs or the way of the arm that Iran will use it will take at least 1 year to 2-3 years. And this is the fact. While Israel is adopting 2 channels against Iran today. One is to create any kind of stopping or trying to prevent the speedily time they are working about the nuclear material. But in my opinion, much more important is to break and to stop the arm of producing the missiles and using the high technology that will be used under this kind of producing. And besides it, you have to add it the fact that the arm of Iran, Tehran, Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut is trying to create a border, a large border with Israel that start in Rosh Hanikra, the border in the Mediterranean, the triangle meeting, Mediterranean, Israel, Lebanon, till the triangle middle border between Israel, Jordan, and Syria. We succeed to stop Iran and Hezbollah to create us a new Lebanon proxy inside the Golan Heights, but we still have a major problem with the main proxy in Lebanon. On the other hand, we are working a lot every day, every night, Israeli blamed by foreign sources that it strike places in Syria which are producing or are building the forces to achieve this kind of things. And to your question, I think that with the junction we are standing concerning Iran, the way United States is going until now not succeed to close agreement with Iran has to be together with an opportunities that will not be only under Israeli strategic defended the country by a large area that will be included United States, Europe, and some Gulf countries that need the backwind of United States to do it.
Okay, we go now back to Gaza. You mentioned Salah al-Aruri. Is targeted assassination of Hamas's leadership like al-Aruri is in Israel's interest, and does targeted assassination as a policy work effectively enough to weaken Hamas or other terror organizations?
I think that basically, in my opinion, those who are sending the terrorists, who are encouraging terror, are really should be in the arsenal, that they will know that they are one of the main goals, target that Israel can target them. It will not stop the terror, it will not destroy the Hamas movement, but it will create Hamas a damage and also a direct punishment to murderers. And Salah al-Aruri is a high murderer. So if Israel should use this family of targets on his opportunities, in my opinion, the answer is yes. But the main issue is the answer is when. You cannot do it on a time like today, while everybody is defending himself or moving to a shelter. You should do it under taking risks on regular time when there is quiet in Gaza and quiet outside of Israel. There you have to surprise those murderers, and you have to take in such a decision, calculating risk and decide when. If you ask me if we should do it like a man as Aruri, of course the answer is yes. Israel should adopt it and his new policy towards Hamas. The answer should be yes, and it will be only one of the tools. The other meaning, as the same mechanism, is to say whether Israel should attack in a former step, for example, a producing of MPVs or producing of rockets or missile for a long range, of developing. That is also a question concerning Hamas in a promo for a small example towards the main question mark to Israel, in my opinion, in the coming 1 or 2 years, it means the area of Lebanon. Stopping Iran, it means weak, very strongly Hezbollah, and that means Israel can do it under circumstances that are not expected.
Okay, our time is up. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Major General Eitan Dangot, for his presentation and lecture. Please join us for our next briefings and lectures. Goodbye from Jerusalem.
Thank you.